click that, will it like, Joe, can you hear us?
Now I can. Just
Okay.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, and you can hear me, okay?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic. Sorry, I tested positive for COVID last week, so I thought you guys might appreciate it if I stayed home.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but thank you. We appreciate that.
I feel fine, but thanks.
Okay, good. That's good. So we were just taking roll call. I know, sorry, you missed the first, just the opening to the meeting, but we were taking roll call and staff had called your name.
Yes,
I'll do that once again.
Perfect.
For the record, Board Member Carlson. He is present. Board Member Nichols,
I'm present.
Board Member Younger,
Present.
Vice Chair Sai is excused, and Chair Hill,
Present.
you have quorum.
Great. Thank you so much. So we will now move on to the approval of the agenda. Board members, do you have any requests for additions or revisions to the agenda? If so, please, if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand or you can just speak out. And anyone here in person, please just speak out. I hear silence. So seeing no requests, I would like a vote of the board to proceed with the approval of the agenda as submitted. Those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, excellent. So we now have approval of the agenda. Staff, do you need to recognize the approval of the agenda?
Correct.
Perfect, great, thank you. Next, we will move into disclosure of site visits and the ex parte contacts. So board members, did you visit the site or were in contact with any of today's agenda's item and had discussions with anyone? We'll go through, first we'll start with Joe. Joe,
I have not.
none? Okay, great. Board member Younger
No, none.
and board member Nichols?
Nope.
And myself, no. So we will now move on to the public comment, the general public comment section. Are there any items, staff, that are there any public comments for items that are not on the agenda this evening?
We do not have any public comments via email. For anyone in Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to make any general comments regarding any non-agendized items.
Unknown caller.
We do not have any public comments on Zoom.
Do we have any, and no public comments in person either?
No public comments here in chambers.
Perfect, great, thank you so much. We will now move into our continued items section. And so this item is at 221 Fairview Avenue. It's to allow for a 305 square foot addition to an existing 1,030 square foot single family dwelling. And this is a continuation from, I believe it was the October Design Review Board meeting.
And Chairperson Hill, I have to recuse myself from this project as I live within 1,000 feet of it.
Great, thank you.
I'll be back.
Great, thank you, Board Member Younger.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. So staff, I see that we have a presentation this evening.
Good evening, Chair, and members of the board. So this item was continued from our regularly scheduled October 6th, 2022 DRB meeting, where a subcommittee was formed. The applicant will be providing a presentation to solicit comments from the Design Review Board on the new design. After the presentation from the applicant, we are requesting that this item be continued to the next regularly scheduled DRB meeting on December 1st. And in order to do that, we would still need to open a public hearing, a public comment, and take a motion for it. So now I would like to pass it along to the applicant.
Great, thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nick Aho. I'm the designer on the project. So per our last meeting, there was a few items we discussed, as well as our follow-up meeting we had, the 2 follow-up meetings, regarding window placement, materiality, how the facade projected into the setbacks a little bit. And this is our first attempt at addressing those items. First and foremost, we expanded into the front yard and also included a larger patio area, front porch patio, made larger windows to get away from the bunker look we had before, as well as added fascia elements and composite wood elements to the accents throughout the facade as well. If you can go to the next slide, please. Here's the rear yard, similar materiality to the front, minus the hardy board. It's a combination of stucco as well as, once again, the wood composite siding. We also addressed the issue regarding the glazing system in the rear. It was pretty much a full curtain wall, almost 100% glazing. And it was brought up that there might be some heat gain and issues. So toned it down to about 60% of that. And it also gave us an opportunity to play with the materiality of that facade. And we took advantage of adding some additional square footage by playing with the massing in the rear yard. Could you go to the next slide, please? Here's another angle of the front yard showing more of the hardy board as well as the canopy that would surround the perimeter of the house, extending off of the existing roof, which would be clad with sheet metal. And if you can go to the next slide, please. Here's a floor plan showing the additions. You can see the rear yard is that rectangular piece with the triangular wedge, and the front yard is the closet and master bath poking into the front yard. It's about 16 feet 9 inches from the property line. Next slide, please. This is a case study. It's 1105 Buena Vista Street. It's about 1,300 feet from the property. We thought it had some elements that we wanted to potentially incorporate into our scheme. And we thought it was a modern looking home, relatively close to our site that we felt like we wanted to, match up to. And if you can go to the next slide, please. Here's some material studies. Well, I wouldn't call them studies, just material in general. It's wood siding as well as composite decking that we were entertaining. If you could go to the next slide, please. This is something we're leaning more towards. It's a composite, more thin, wood-looking Ipe-esque material that we would orient horizontally throughout the facades. Next slide, please. It's new tech. You could buy it at Home Depot, so it's readily available. Next slide. And it has all the elements we would need to finish corners, because our last meeting did address how we would deal with the corner condition and the way the two materials met between whether it be stucco and the wood or the hardy board and the wood. Next slide, please. It's some more trim pieces. Next. We're also considering interlocking metal roofing system. That would be either a light or medium dark gray. And there was some concern about the SRI value and how it would compare to asphalt shingles. And we felt as though that the sheet metal in some instances performed better than the asphalt shingles, and would hope that that would be a good enough reason, as well as the aesthetic and the longevity of the material itself, to include it in the project. And yeah, that pretty much concludes what I had to say.
Great, thank you. Steph, can you remind me, should we open this up to public comment as well? Is this in this specific situation?
Thank you, Chair Hill. So staff is recommending maybe provide comments to the applicant based on the presentation. Then we all can open up for public comment, then we can have follow-up. But at the end, of course, staff's recommendation is to continue the site into the next DRP meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. That's very helpful. Thanks for clarifying. So in that case, I will open it up to the board members to ask the applicant questions. So Joe, if you wouldn't mind, Board Member Carlson, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have one comment. We looked at this in our subcommittee meeting, and we were both, I think, quite pleased with the improvements. But in the presentation that we just saw on the elevation that is just to the left of this, the left side of the house, or the front of the house, this elevation concerned me a little bit, that there's a lot of hardy board there, and with no contrast. I just wonder, I'm not that familiar with that material, so I'm just not sure how this would look, and I'd be interested in entertaining other people's comments on, particularly those of you that are more familiar with these materials, if you think this would work, or if it's going to look as kind of sterile as it does here.
Is that a question for the applicant too? Would you like them to kind of address that, Joe?
Yes, and then if anybody else has any comment with respect to that, maybe this isn't the exact right time for that, but that's my concern. This just looks a little bit, there's just a lot of one thing going on here. So I don't know if there's any other option or something.
I think it's a fair comment. I agree that it does look a little sterile in comparison to the other elevations. We're just, initially a little concerned about budget. We don't want to overdo wood cladding and
Right.
drain that budget. So I figured maybe the soffit underside of the canopy would be enough, but we could absolutely entertain putting in maybe a break between the two windows of wood paneling potentially, or maybe adding a wainscot or of some sort. Those are just, me spitballing off the top of my head right now, but
Well, maybe when we move forward to the commissioner's comments, we can address this. Somebody else might have another suggestion. That was really my only comment or question for you.
Great, thank you, Board Member Carlson. Board Member Nichols, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Well, to follow on Joe's comment, the hardy board, is it? I can't remember when you flip through the materials palettes, is it's kind of rendered there, kind of a light gray. Is that the color? Because that might, his use of the word sort of stark or sterile, I think somewhat relates to the sort of the color, and it's the white and the light gray together. Is that the color that's going to be?
It was, yes.
Yeah, okay.
But we're obviously open to suggestions in terms of the color.
Because two thoughts I had was my first thought looking at this was it would be nice to have the windows tops and bottoms to kind of line up with the joint lines. So
Absolutely.
you're not having to like notch panels kind of around the windows. But to Joe's comment, I was wondering if maybe if you trim the window with the same wood, might be one way to add a little warmth there, but without like doing the whole wall in wood, to your budget concern. I don't know if that's just one thing that might be something worth testing. But I didn't look at it, and I didn't necessarily. Yeah, I wasn't too worried about that facade because it's kind of the driveway edge and it's the side. I don't know how visible that is from the street. Is it
I would say it's visible, but it isn't the prominent elevation by any means. I think there's a lot more on the front elevation that takes away from that. I think
And-
it's just the way the perspective is taken that you kind of lose a lot of the surrounding materiality.
Yeah. And that's a planter, right?
That is,
And
yes,
so that would ultimately be full of like
that's correct.
stuff that would, I think, help kind of green it up, you know.
Sorry, any other questions?
No, I mean, like Joe said, that I feel like, you know, when it started, it was kind of all flat and there wasn't kind of a lot kind of going on eventually. I think it's come a long way. So
Great.
I don't have
Thank
any
you.
other comments.
Great, thank you. And then for myself, so I wasn't at the previous design review board meeting. And I really respect my colleagues, their input and direction. So I'm gonna kind of just piggyback off what they had already mentioned. So for me, I think part of looking at this is the rendering itself. There's just a lot of white, but in reality, there's going to be plants. Most likely there will be, I'm assuming between the pavers, there's going to be grass,
Gravel.
weeds, whatever.
Yeah.
So there'll be some contrast there that might be helpful. I guess the only other question I had is maybe about some of the materials. I'm familiar with a product that seems very similar. It's longboard. I don't know if you've looked at longboard or the aluminum composite with
Right.
the finish. Have you installed that before, the material on a residential application?
I have not.
Okay. Yeah, that's the only, I mean, I think it's great. It's a great material. It's actually, if you go down Fair Oaks on pavilions, that's what they've installed on the
Oh.
exterior. So that's a real life example of a mock-up to just kind of see how it performs and what it looks like. So I like that approach. I think it's a great durable material. But I guess my question would be, it seems like there's definitely a more contemporary minimalist approach to the project. But would you be interested in adding colors to show some contrast?
Yes, colors are definitely in the playbook of what we're willing to do. We kept it pretty minimal grayscale with the, warmer wood, but something to play off of that is, yeah, something we would definitely entertain. What that is, I'm not too sure yet. If you have any suggestions in terms of color palette, we're all ears.
Or even if, if just looking at it, I see, I mean, we're stuck on this one rendering here. We haven't really gone through a few of the other ones. And this specific rendering, the color and your eye is drawn to the roof because that's where there is more texture and more color. But then I see the railing that's been integrated and that's also in the similar neutral palette. So I almost wonder if something like that's lower to the ground kind of makes it pop a little bit more, the planter. So not necessarily even those facade materials, but just the elements around it, the
Right.
accessories, I'll call them. So that's
Okay.
something to consider too, just to kind of give it a little bit more pop, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. Concrete color, metal or wood railings, the color at which we use for the grate or yeah, inside of the railing. I think maybe with Brian Nichols's suggestion about trimming the window with wood could also help break that up a little bit. Yeah.
Great. And I know that was a little bit more than a question. There was a bunch of comments in there, but I think then if you have, I think now at this point, we can open up to the public hearing for public comments. So thank you. And we will open up to public and then after that, we'll have a discussion amongst ourselves.
Great. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So staff, were there any public comments on this specific agenda item?
Is there anyone in Zoom that would like to make public comments regarding this item? We have no one on Zoom wanting to make public comments. Anyone here in City Council wanting to make any comments on this item? We have not received any public comments in City Council chambers.
Great, excellent, thank you. So then we'll now close the public comment portion and move into discussion amongst ourselves. So I invite my fellow board members to unmute their mics, turn on their mics, and then we can just, we can start the discussion. So Board Member Nichols, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. I mean, I kind of agree that it's a little bit like a little color or a little bit more, I don't know the right way to express, but like adding a little more contrast between the different pieces. That may just mean like, like for instance, the planter, it's kind of rendered out as white. I'm sure it probably won't be white. But that or the rail, or even like getting a slightly deeper color to the hardy board.
Mhm.
Like just a lot of those things could just add a little bit of contrast between the hardy board and the plaster part without really making the hardy board, letting it still
Yeah.
contrast with the wood piece. So I think it's almost like a tweak of
Yeah.
of that rather than really changing it.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think there's just minimal things that can be done to just kind of make it a little bit more, I'm going to use the word exciting. I know I also don't have like the perfect word for it because it's very neutral. Part of it's the rendering too, I think.
Yeah.
So, and I know, and as architects, as designers, we very much sometimes get stuck on imagery that we see. But that's the way that we convey future design. So, with that being said, I think, to your point that it most likely the planter material probably won't be that white unless it's painted and intentional. So there's a good chance that there will be more contrast than what we're seeing here in this particular image. Board Member Carlson, do you have anything that you want to add?
Yeah, I would kind of echo both of your comments that I think that it's just some tweaks. If the hardy board were a little deeper value, so there was a little bit more contrast against the stucco, I think that could make a huge difference. And then I think that Samantha, your comment about that we're not seeing the landscaping, so plantings in that planter would make a huge difference in visually, as well as the contrast in the pavers. And then maybe if the railing on the porch, if the steel frame kind of mimicked that color on the roof, that could be a nice little pop too.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think it's color tweaks, like we're all saying.
I agree. Staff, do you mind going to the rendering of the front? There we go. Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I mean, seeing this rendering in comparison to the other side that we were just looking at, there is a lot more contrast, a lot more variation. And I think it looks good. I don't know how you all feel about this front. And there's some interesting, unique little details, I'd say, like how the fascia kind of wraps around and then comes down the side on the right-hand side of the screen there by the wood fence. I kind of think that's an interesting detail. I don't know if there's anything else, any other comments?
I don't have any
No.
other comments.
No. So then in that case, staff, I know that is it a recommendation to continue the project to the December 1st, or is it a requirement in this case?
Motion to continue the project to the next hearing.
Okay, so we do not make a decision this evening okay, it's just
Yeah,
to solicit comments this evening.
So the purpose of today's meeting is to have the applicant to provide kind of presentation of what they have so far, but obviously they understood that the project itself is not ready. So the purpose is get your comments, get like specific feedback so they can get ready for the next December 1st meeting.
Okay, perfect.
And also we do need the board members to kind of make a motion to officially continue to the December meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. So then I will make the motion to continue the project to the next design review board meeting on, I believe it's December 1st of this year of 2022. So would anybody like to make a second that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Great, thank you. So we have a motion to continue the project to the next regularly scheduled design review board meeting in December. Myself, Chair Hill had made the motion, and we had a second from Board Member Carlson. So staff, do we need to take roll call?
That is correct. I'll start with Board Member Younger. She is excused. Board Member Nichols,
Yes.
Board Member Carlson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sai is excused, and Chair Hill.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. We're looking forward to seeing the updates come December. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to the other agenda items for our public hearing this evening. So our third agenda item is at 1648 Spruce Street. Actually, before I continue, I just want to re-invite Board Member Board Member Younger into the chambers. Hello, welcome back. Great, thank you. So, so this evening, the third item under our public hearing is 1648 Spruce Street, and that's the demolish of a front facade and rear of an existing single-family dwelling to add a 3,037 square foot addition, 625 square feet of the first floor and 2,612 square feet to the second floor. The demolition of an existing 684 square feet garage and to construct a new 504 square foot two-car garage. Staff, is there a presentation, please?
Yes, Chair.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. So this project is project number 2489, a notice of intent to demolish and design review for the property located at 1648 Spruce Street. The subject site is an irregular lot located on the northerly side of Spruce Street between Fair Oaks Avenue and Marengo Avenue. The lot measures approximately 16,195 square feet and is bounded by residential to the north, south, east, and west. The site is currently developed with an existing single-family dwelling and a detached garage. The slide before you identifies a street view image of the residence, which was built in 1937, and the property is a non-contributor to the eligible one Onta Park District, which is comprised of modestly sized period revival family residences with high degree of integrity. The residence is built in the ranch style, which is identified by the single-story floor plan, the low-pitched roof line, and the L-shaped design. This project, a little bit of background, this project was presented before the Cultural Heritage Commission during their regularly scheduled September 15, 2022 meeting. Pursuant to the South Pasadena Municipal Code under the city's historic ordinance, any structure over 45 years in age that proposes a demolition and is not a cultural resource requires the preparation of an intensive level historic resource evaluation or an HRE. The HRE was prepared by the city selected consultant, and after analyzing the property, determined that the property was deemed ineligible for designation as a city of South Pasadena landmark, nor met any local designation criteria. The CHC determined that the property does not meet the national, state, or local criteria for historic designation, and that the project may proceed through the city's application process for the partial demolition of the residence and the garage. The HRE was attached to the staff report as attachment number 6. So for the actual project, the applicant is requesting a design review permit to add 3,237 square feet to the existing single-family dwelling. The property is located within the residential estate zone and is developed with a 2,366 square foot residence and a 684 square foot detached 3-car garage. The property has undergone some minor work with only the construction of a new attached enclosed wood patio in 1986, and other permit history identified work for interior remodels, mechanical permits, and some electrical upgrades. The existing residence is currently a 1-story floor plan where the front facade and the rear of the existing residence is proposed to be demolished. In addition, the existing 3-car garage and attached covered patio towards the rear is proposed to be demolished to make way for the proposed addition. The addition of 3,237 square feet will be broken down into a 625 square foot addition to the first floor and a 2,612 square foot addition to the second floor. Within the first floor addition area, the kitchen will be expanded, a family room will be created, and a laundry room will be relocated. The first floor will also have some interior improvements to the dining room, library, and some bathrooms. The second floor will add a primary bedroom, primary bathroom, primary closet, 4 additional bedrooms, and 3 bathrooms, bringing the count up to 6 bedrooms in total. A 498 square foot covered patio is proposed at the rear of the residence, and a 504 square foot 2-car garage is proposed at the rear with an ADU above. It is worth noting that the ADU is not subject to the discretionary review by the board and will be reviewed in the future administratively. Lastly, the project does propose new landscaping, new lighting, a new driveway, and a new walkway. Overall, the project complies with the development standards for the RE zone and can be found on page 3 of your staff report. So the project is proposing to modify the existing architectural design from a ranch style to colonial revival. And that is being achieved by adding architectural elements such as the large group windows with shutters, a portico with columns at the front facade, a new chimney, and a mixture of stucco and horizontal wood siding, which the rendering in front of you identifies. Overall, the South Pasadena design guidelines for enhancing existing non-historic residences reference installation of new architectural details for residences where they should reflect the architectural character of the residence and the architectural vocabulary of the neighborhood. Based on the submittal, the project proposes a design that is both compatible with the surrounding composition of the neighborhood, where it is comprised of various single and 2-story homes. Specifically, the 2 adjacent properties to the east and west are 2-story homes. This slide in front of you identifies the existing site plan, where the area highlighted in blue identifies the existing structure. The area highlighted in purple identifies the existing 3-car garage to be demolished. This slide identifies the proposed site plan. I did highlight in green both the first floor and the second floor. So the blue greenish color, that is the first floor footprint, and the darker green color identifies the second story. The yellow area highlighted that is attached to the main home, that is that patio cover. And then the structure towards the rear in orange, that is the proposed 2-car garage with the ADU on top. This slide identifies the first floor floor plan for both the existing and the proposed, where the left-hand side floor plan identifies that existing patio area that they will be demolishing. And then to the right, it identifies the green area for the addition. And the yellow is the patio cover. This identifies the second floor floor plan, where you can see it on top of the existing design. This elevation is on the southerly side, which is the front facade area. The top is the existing, the bottom is the proposed. This elevation is to the north, which is the rear, identifying the existing on top and the proposed at bottom. We have the easterly end of elevation on the side, as well as the west side. Overall, the recommendation this evening is for the design review board to approve the project subject to the conditions of approval. Staff would like to know that we did receive public comment for this item, and it is included in your packets. It was also posted to the website as an additional document, and there is also a copy here present for the public. This concludes my presentation, and staff is happy to answer any questions. Property owner and the applicant designer are also here to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. So board members, we will now, if we have any questions for the staff, we will now ask them. So I'll start with board member Younger. Do you have any questions for the staff?
I do not.
Great. Board member Nichols.
Just about the the comment and the memo that was, I guess, sent in about the, I guess, the wall that is potentially crossing the property line. Is that going to be addressed?
Thank you, Board Member Nichols. So the existing site plan does identify that area that the public comment was referring to. It looks like because the 3-car garage is currently up to the property line, there will be a space left there. So we will address it during plan check to make sure that they replace that area with new fencing. And we will talk to the applicant whether it's going to be on their property, if they're going to share it, or what the agreement will be between the two property owners.
Okay. That's the only question I had.
Great, thank you. Board Member Carlson, do you have any questions for staff?
I do not.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, my only question was regarding the property line and that potential wall that might be built on it. So I appreciate that clarification. So then I guess we will close out this portion of questions for the staff. Does the applicant have a presentation they would also like to give to the board members this evening?
They do not have an official application, but
Okay, great. Okay, great, perfect. So we'll go through and we'll ask questions to the applicant specifically. So I'll start with Board Member Carlson this time. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
I don't know. Mm-mm.
Okay, great, thank you. Board Member Younger, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I don't.
And Board Member Nichols?
I do not either.
Okay, great. I do have a question. I'm trying to think if this is a question or more of a comment. I do have a question, but this would probably for the designer. Is the designer available? Okay, great. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium, that'd be great. Hi, good evening. So I was curious because I know that in the way that the information was presented was the approach to the architectural style of the house was colonial. I'd say this looks closer to me like more like federal colonial style. But I'm curious what the reason why that particular architectural style was chosen to pursue.
The owner actually wanted that style of architecture. So that's why we went in that direction of colonial revival.
Okay,
Yes.
great. It's a bit of it's a different style from the existing, so which is not an issue. And I just was curious as to
Yes.
what the,
That was an owner's choice.
okay,
Yes.
okay, great. Thank you. That's my only question. Thanks. Okay, so I think then in this case, there's no more questions for the applicant. So we will we'll move into the public hearing portion. And I know that we already discussed the one public comment that was received, but staff, do we have any other public comments this evening, either in chambers or on Zoom?
We have not received any public comments through email after the posting of the agenda. If we have anyone in Zoom that would like to speak in behalf of this project, please go ahead and raise your hand. We have no Zoom participants. If we have anyone in city council chambers that would like to speak in behalf of this project, please let us know. No speakers for this project in chambers.
Great, thank you. So we'll close the public comment portion, and we will now move into a discussion amongst ourselves, the board members. So again, I invite you to turn on your microphones, and I'm going to ask Board Member Younger to kick us off.
All I have to say is that it's a lovely looking home. It seems to fit in the neighborhood. I have zero problems with it. It's very pretty.
Great, thanks. Do you have anything to add? Board Member Nichols?
No, I mean, when I first saw it, when you just first see the plans and you think, wow, it got a lot bigger, but then when you see like the documentation of the neighborhood and the neighboring houses
Yeah.
show that it's of a similar scale to the stuff around it. So like that initial reaction, I think when you saw the rest of the material, it kind of,
Made sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. And it looks it looks like an improvement over what's there. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, it's an
yeah,
improvement.
yeah. So I don't really have any.
Okay, great. Board Member Carlson, do you have anything to add?
I would agree that I know that neighborhood well, and there are some quite large homes in that part of the city. But could we look at the rear elevation, rendering of the rear elevation? That's okay. I didn't get a chance to look at this very closely, but no, I think that looks nice. I don't have any issues with this house. I think it's a great improvement. Thanks.
Great, thanks. I think I'm going to be the unpopular one here in this discussion. So I saw this, actually, I'm glad that we're on this back elevation. I saw this elevation and I thought, wow, that's really beautiful. I'd love to see a rendering of that. And then I saw the rendering of the front, and staff, if you wouldn't mind going to the rendering of the front facade. Yeah, that's perfect. And I have to apologize. I've lived in many colonials in my life, so I'm very familiar with colonial style. I kind of saw this design, particularly just the front facade, as it's almost if a Federalist colonial style architecture had a baby with a 1970s house, like this is the result of it. And for me, I think I was trying to dive into why, and I think I have a little bit of a challenge with that cantilever that breaks up the first and the second level. Additionally, the 2 bay windows, there isn't really a traditional colonial style look. And then lastly, for me, the window proportions, typically in colonial, they're not horizontal, they have a vertical. And so in this case, they almost appear very, for lack of a better term, they have a squatty or short proportion to them, very horizontal. And that's not really in that traditional colonial style. So while I'm not opposed to the design, I definitely find that there are little nuances to it that could probably be improved to really kind of give it, I think, a little bit more enhanced character. I don't know if anybody has any retorts to that. I'd be happy to welcome the discussion.
Samantha, are you suggesting that the second floor windows become closer to the proportion of the first floor, just a little elongated a little bit?
I think for me, what the challenge is you've got these long windows, but if you look at traditional colonial architecture, they typically are, as I mentioned, vertical. So breaking them up and providing more individual windows as opposed to just one large horizontal. Does that make
I see.
sense?
Gotcha.
And so that was one thing that seemed just, when I looked at it proportionally, it didn't register with me in terms of a traditional colonial style architecture. I think, and this is again, the change in materials, I'm assuming that the top, you've got a siding. I don't know if that's a wood siding or what that material is specifically. But then underneath it's solid. So I'm assuming that that's a stucco. So that mixture of the materials too, again, isn't really of the traditional colonial architecture. So while the chimney is, I think the side is, I really appreciated the side elevations as well as the rear elevation. But I do think that there are some elements here that could be adjusted or changed. So I know, as I said, I'm probably the unpopular, my opinion is probably the unpopular one here, but I'm willing to, I don't know if we want to, I don't know if anybody agrees, disagrees.
Well, I'll say I don't really know anything about colonial style. But when you point out the windows being kind of horizontal and slightly different in kind of the proportion of what I see happening on the first floor, I do see that now, and I do think it wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing to have those second floor windows be a little sort of expressed in a little bit more stretch them, or like you said, maybe break them into smaller windows in some fashion. I see your point. it didn't immediately jump out when I first reviewed it, but like I said, I don't really, like it stylistically, I don't really know what the specific sort of aspects to.
And I'm happy to, if everybody else on the board really feels like, hey, this is still a good design and we're happy with it, then to me, I have no issue saying, okay, let's continue it. But if we think we want to make some, or excuse me, to approve it, but if we think we want to make some recommendations to continue, I'd like to get your feedback on that.
I would always defer to you and the style of a colonial, as I'm not that familiar with colonial.
I apologize to the applicant for living in colonial style architecture my whole life, unfortunately.
I'm personally, I'm fine with it as it is.
Okay.
But I'm happy to defer to you.
I think in this case, because I do think that the project is well-designed and it is attractive and it is a major improvement from the existing house, I am happy to just approve the project with maybe some recommendations to consider changing the proportions of the windows, looking at the double material of the stucco and the siding, the horizontal wood siding, and can reconsider that horizontal cantilever. It seems like we have the applicant would like to make a comment. Yeah, would you mind coming to the podium?
Top windows? That's your issue, right? Is the windows are,
The proportions of the top windows, yes.
I'm fine with that, but I think that the breaking the material from the stucco to the siding on the top is an important element of this. Otherwise it becomes, because the facade is so large, we need a break here in terms of, I think, while it's not a classic colonial, it does have that change of the material is really important. I think the design of it. I agree with you that I've been troubled a little bit by the windows. I don't mind revisiting that. I hope it doesn't take another 3 months.
I completely understand that. That is not our goal here. So we, that being said, I think my point about the two different materials is that stucco is not traditional on colonial architecture. My house happens to be colonial now, and I do have this variation between my second and first floor, and how it's achieved is it's the same material, but there's a difference in patterning. So, you can look at something like that as well. I think, again, I'm going to just make this as a recommendation and not necessarily something that's required. So this way we will approve the project this evening and consider the changes to the windows. And I think, and staff, that is something that is allowable, right? We can just make a general recommendation without having to continue the project, correct?
Chair, if I may, that is correct. You're more than welcome to make recommendations. If you were also interested, we could add a condition of approval that the project required chair review. So once they make the changes to the windows, it gets sent back to either the chair or a representative of the chair prior to submittal to building and safety. So it would be up to the decision of the board.
Okay, great. I think in that case, I would like to do that if everybody is on the board, if my fellow board members are okay with that. So I'd like to approve the project with the recommendations to look at the second floor windows and the proportions of those, as well as the two materials, specifically the stucco. And once those changes have been studied, to come back as a chair review for the final approval. Can that count as a motion? So that's a motion. Do I have a second?
I would second that, yeah.
Great. So I made a motion to approve the project with the condition that there will be some changes implemented based on our recommendations, and it will come back as a chair review for final approval. And a second motion was made by Board Member Carlson. So staff, roll call, please.
Board Member Younger,
Yes.
Board Member Nichols,
Yes.
Board Member Carlson,
Yes,
Vice Chair Sai is excused, and Chair Hill.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. So the project is approved with the conditions. and the following approval of a chair review. And so that passes, or that continues with a vote of 4-0. And so this decision is final unless appeal is filed within 15 days from today. No construction or activity may commence during this period, and appeal forms may be obtained from the city clerk's office. Thank you. Okay, so we're still under our public hearing portion, and we are on agenda item number 4. And this is a project at 1121 Buena Vista Street. And I believe that board member Carlson will need to recuse herself.
Younger.
I apologize. Board member Younger will need to recuse herself. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. The item before you tonight is 1121 Buena Vista Street for design review number 2482 -DRX. And you can go to the next slide, please. The project is located at 1122 Buena Vista. And next slide. The projects consist of partially demolished existing garage, adding 40 square feet, and also relocating the garage entry from the side of a house to the front of a house. And the project also including redesign the roof line and also a new curb cut or driveway to Buena Vista Street. And last but not least, the project including adding additional square footage to the front as well as patio cover, and also a modification to the front elevation, which is facing the street. The project itself exempt from CEQA requirement as Class 1 exemption. And this is a pictures taken looking at existing house facing the street. And the project itself, the property is zone RE, which is stands for residential estate, and the lot says at least 14,000 square feet. And currently, the house square footage is approximately 2,179 square feet. And the garage is about 393 square feet. The project planner, Sandra, is unable to attend the meeting tonight, but she provided a staff report for your review. And also she provided the background information, including the house was built in 1956. And back in 2017, there was a building permit to renovate the deck and also adding additional square footage as well, some interior remodeling to the house. And this picture provides the existing and proposed site plan. So the changes relative noticeable is to the front of the house, including the addition to the garage as well. The new kind of layout of the driveway, instead of a access to the side of the house, this will be a kind of straight shot going from Buena Vista to the house. And this slide provides the existing and proposed floor plans. Like staff mentioned earlier, the additions relative to the front of the house, including the expansion of the garage, expansion of the entry, as well as a patio cover in front of the house. The next slide. So this slide kind of tells a better kind of illustration what the proposed project will be. And on the top is the existing elevation, and on the bottom is the proposed elevations. As you can tell, the roof line, the garage portion of the roof line is proposed to increase. And also, the garage door will be facing to the front street. This slide provides the west elevation, which is to the left, and the back of the house is kind of a split level. So on the back end, it looks like a 2-story, but it's more, staff will more characterize as more like a split level pad. It was the back portion is more like a 2-level, but the project itself is mostly focused to the front, which is to the left of this picture. And this is the existing and proposed floor plans. And the complete architectural plan is part of your package as one of the attachments. The project designer provide several color rendering for the board to consider, and this is the front color rendering. So the board can review kind of perspective rendering once the project is completed. And the additional rendering provided to a different angle, so the board can have a better perspective or a better understanding of what the project will be. At the end, the staff is recommending the design review board to approve this project, subject to the condition contained in the staff report. And just for the board's information, the property owner as well as the project designer are available here to answer any questions. And this concludes staff's presentation. Staff is ready for any question.
Great, thank you. So let's go and we'll move into the portion of questions for the staff. So Board Member Nichols, do you have any questions for staff?
No, I don't.
Great, thank you. Board Member Carlson, do you have any questions for staff?
No.
And I also do not have any questions for staff. So we'll move into the next portion. Does the applicant have a presentation this evening?
They don't have a presentation, but they are available to answer any question you may have.
Okay, great, thanks. So we'll move into questions for the applicant. Board Member Carlson, do you have any questions specifically for the applicant or designer?
Yes, I do. Overall, I think I like the look of it. I can't tell from the renderings, and I haven't seen the material samples. The garage is obviously quite prominent and forward facing. What is the proposed material for the garage door?
Let's have the applicant or applicant's designer come to the podium, please.
Am I here? Hello, hi.
Hi,
Hi.
good evening.
So the garage door it's going to be black aluminum
Okay,
with opaque glass up top.
and you said black aluminum, is that correct?
Yes,
And does that mimic what's around the windows or the doors on the front?
yeah, the the house in the back currently has black doors and windows. The front
I
will be
see.
the matching black doors and windows. All the trim and the pergola will be in black.
And that's the aluminum, that's a big, what's the texture or finish? Is it a textured aluminum, matte aluminum? I mean, I know that's a big surface area, and aluminum and oxidizes over time. I just wonder how that garage door is going to hold up being.
It would be like a black anodized aluminum.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Board Member Nichols, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I was just gonna ask about the ridge line of the garage. Because the earlier garage kind of sat lower, but it looks like the rafters are in front of the door. So I kind of get why the garage is kind of higher, but I was just wondering as if there was any way to kind of pull the ridge line down just a little bit so that the garage feels kind of secondary to the main kind of body and mass of the house. And what I would do is I think it would make that sort of the area above the garage door a little smaller because it feels kind of large to me. But I don't know, sort of, there's kind of a geometry there that you wouldn't like. You got to kind of watch the rafters, and then you've got this little pergola over the front door and kind of making that all work. But like my gut is just pulling it down, a foot would kind of make the garage, I think, to kind of what Joe's saying, kind of the garage is kind of more prominent now, kind of shrinking it a little bit, I think would kind of help feel the massing feel more comfortable. But I didn't, it's one of those things you have to like test.
Yeah.
But I was just curious if you'd tried that or if you thought that might be a possibility.
Well, the part of the intention was to create more space inside of the garage. I do see your point. It is a bit massive. But and also the other point was that the rafters begin to come down closer as you're kind of walking into the entrance. I suppose, yeah, maybe coming down 6 inches a foot,
Mm.
and I probably wouldn't want to make it more shallow. I think it might look
No,
kind of funky,
I don't think you'd want to
Yeah.
flatten it. It seems like the right pitch to me,
Mhm.
or like it feels like it matches. But
Yeah.
but it just like even 6 inch, it like even just a little bit seems like it would help. Just kind of because it makes one
Yeah.
sort of the primary and one kind of the secondary.
I think that works.
And I have one additional quick question. Is it still going to be utilized as a garage, or is it going to be a living space?
Oh, it'll still be a garage.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And I have to say I appreciate because the storybook and the sort of all the little curly cues and stuff. I kind of appreciate the sort of simplifying some of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Oh.
Interesting. Do you have any other question?
No,
Board member?
that was it.
I don't necessarily have any other questions. I think mine will just come in comments later. So we'll close out the questions to the applicant section, and we will now move into the public hearing portion. Staff, do we have any public comments for this item?
Staff has not received any emails regarding this item since the posting of the agenda. Do we have anyone in Zoom who would like to make comments regarding the current item? No one on Zoom? Do we have anyone in chambers who would like to make a comment on this item? No one in chambers.
Okay, great. Thank you. So then we will close the public comment section, and we will now open it up to have a discussion amongst ourselves. So if you can just turn on your mics, and Board Member Carlson, would you like to kick us off?
I don't really have any additional comments other than what was discussed. I really agree about the lowering that pitch of the garage slightly, just to make it a little less pronounced, and I think it'll sit against the rest of the house a little bit better. It'll feel more cohesive. That would be about it.
I mean, I agree with that comment as well. Either pulling down the roof or looking at the pitch just to kind of give it some, I would say, relief in that specific facade, because it is very prominent there. Steph, would you mind going to the 3D view? I don't know if it's a perspective or Axon. Oh, there we go, the perspective. Because I will say I laughed when I read the description about, I believed it was 6 different styles the existing house has on it currently. And yes, I think Storybook was a perfect description of that one element. Did it say, I missed the Storybook portion, but yeah, it's definitely a huge improvement. So I will say that I really feel that I think the design is simple and clean, and so that's wonderful. But I would encourage that the roof, when I look at it here, I definitely want to, I don't even want to adjust the pitch. I would just want to pull the roof down, but I do understand if the goal is to have additional storage there, then that's something that can be challenging, right? If you're going to be putting storage above your vehicles or whatever may be up there, I understand that could be a concern. So I don't know how
The only question would be, if lowering the roof, is it going to pose a problem with the kind of overhang on the porch and that what's going on there? Would it be better to just lower the pitch slightly so it met the house at the same point at the lower part, just not at the higher part?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a colliding at the edge of the roof with the pergola. So maybe if we could just drop the pitch a hair, maybe 6 inches at the peak.
Mhm.
And then keep the sides, maybe they come down like 3 or 4 inches, but
That sounds reasonable to me.
I mean, what if there was well, okay, yeah, anyway, if that works for you, then stick with that.
I mean, that would be my opinion. I would see what Samantha and Brian have to say and the other board members.
Yeah, I think I would be okay with that. It's really just somehow adjusting the.
Does that mean we return to DRB or?
I think my recommendation would be that we approve the project with the condition of looking at adjusting that, and it would come back as a chair review for approval. That would be my recommendation. I think that's probably the fastest route. So the change would be made, then it comes for chair review and approval, and then you move forward with the project.
Cool. Okay.
Is that something that applicant's interested in? Okay. Okay, great. Excellent. So, does someone want to make a motion? Are we ready to make the motion?
I am.
Okay, great.
What? How do I make a motion? I make a motion to,
I'd
to-
say to approve the project with the condition of changing I can make the motion if you want. You want to second it? So we will approve the project with the condition to study and look at the pitch on over the garage area of that roof. And it will then move into a chair review for review and approval. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. So the motion was made by myself and board member Carlson second the motion. So staff, can we have roll call, please?
Board member Younger, excused. Board member Nichols,
Yes.
board member Carlson,
Yes.
vice chair Sai is excused, and Chair Hill.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. So the project is approved with conditions of the changes to the roof and will be then reviewed as a chair review for approval. And so this is a motion of 3-0, and it is subject to those conditions of approval. The decision is final unless an appeal is filed within 15 days from today. No construction or activity may commence during that period or this period of 15 days. And appeal forms may be obtained from the city clerk's office. Thank you. Okay, great. So we are now closing out, sorry, one moment. We are now closing out the public hearing, and we are moving into administration. So comments from board members. I'm going to invite board member Younger back to the diocese. Great, thank you. Excellent. So board member Carlson, do you have any comments? General
I do
comments?
not. No.
Board member Younger, do you have any general comments?
I do not.
Board member Nichols?
Nope.
And I also do not have any comments. We'll move on to comments from subcommittees. Now, I know that a subcommittee was previously formed on the second agenda item that we discussed this evening, but we did address that. So I don't think there's any updates from those subcommittees.
No.
No, okay. So no updates from subcommittees. So then we will move on to comments from staff.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Thank you for the meeting tonight. So staff have several updates for the board. One is like every meeting, so staff like to provide our update to the housing element. So staff received another comment from the California Department of Housing and Community Development, also HCD, last Friday. And we post a comment letter on the city housing element website. Basically, the HCD gave us several comments to continue work on our housing element draft, and the board members, also the members public, can see that letter from HCD on our city website. And in kind of anticipation to address some of the comments raised by HCD staff, we'll kind of have kind of more like a I guess, city council as well, planning commission will have a special joint session next Wednesday to discuss, what do we going forward with the housing element draft. Basically, staff will be providing, what the, common letter from HCD entails, and also our strategy going forward. How do we address those comments? Because technically we do have a kind of settlement agreement with, I guess, a judgment from the lawsuit that city received. We have to turn around the housing element pretty quick by December 15th. So we only have a little bit over a month left. So there will be a study session, a joint session between city council as well as planning commission next Wednesday here at the chamber. So for the board, for members of the public who would like to join to find out what's happening with our housing element, you can join here. It is in here chamber, but also participate via Zoom. Another item staff would like to provide just more staffing update. We do have a new faces here. You can see right here next to Susanna. She is Mackenzie Goldberg. She's our assistant planner that started in September. So she came from the private sector, but graduated from the USC with master in urban planning. So she will have a couple of cases that will go in front of this body as well as other commissions in the next coming several months. So welcome, Mackenzie.
Welcome.
And a couple updates for staffing updates. City staff Angelica introduced, we do have a new senior housing analyst started yesterday, and she was introduced to the city council yesterday. And the goal of that position basically is to kind of tackle a lot of housing program that city as well as this department need to address in the next several months to implement those housing programs, but also to monitor all this ever-changing state law that we can keep track of. So her function will be implementing housing program, but also monitor all the different state legislative bills. And starting next Monday, we also have a deputy director that used to be a Margaret Lynn's position, but now we're gonna have a full deputy director. She'll be joining us starting next Monday. So hopefully we can bring her to this board as well as other commission later on in December or in January to introduce her to this body. And couple items. So we'll continue to have a December DRB meeting. So that's scheduled for, if I remember correctly, it's a December 1st DRB meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the holiday season for January, staff will be looking to cancel the first meeting of January 5th. But since we have a lot of project that's ready to go before this board, staff will probably kind of polling the board members to find out maybe a special meeting in January. Because I know getting the holidays is kind of tricky that we want to get the item ready for you, but also the first meeting is literally a couple of days right after New Year. It might be tough for the public, for the board member, for the staff to get ready for that meeting. So we probably will be polling the board member to find out a day for a special January meeting. And last but not least, since this is the last meeting before Thanksgiving, staff want to thank all the commissioner board members, and also wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well and the rest of staff. We really appreciate your time, energy, effort, everything that you do for us. So thank you. Thank you so much. So if there's no other comments from staff, then I think we can adjourn this meeting. So I'm now going to adjourn the meeting, hold on one second. So we now, I apologize. Whoops. So thank you. The time is now 7:52 p.m. But I would like to remind everybody of our next regularly scheduled design review board meeting on Thursday, December 1st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone.